Hi everybody, it's Joe Chaffee on this Monday night, the 15th of October. We are halfway through the month of October, believe it or not. And I'm juggling right now because I got a bunch of different things on the screen, and I'm had to set up the show a little bit late tonight. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to just do the business of the night first, get that out of the way really fast. And then we'll get right into the weather. A lot of stuff going on. This is a time of year where you wind up getting, you got hurricane season sort of winding down. You've got all you snow lovers out there in the audience, and I know a bunch of you are on there now because we were talking prior to the start of the live stream. So everybody's starting to read a forecast after forecast, and then just gradually you're going to wind up gravitating to your own biases, which means that if you want cold and snowy winters, you're going to just love the cold and snowy winter forecasts that are out there, and you're going to love the people that produce those forecasts, and then you're going to hate the ones that go in the opposite direction, and then you're going to dislike those people that put out those forecasts, because weather people tend to take these things very, very personally. I learned that very early on. I used to be that way, but I quickly learned that doesn't work very well, especially for yourself, because you wind up just getting agita out of it. So the best approach is to just be kind and be nice to everybody, and then try and maybe rethink the way you experience these things, and that is to just take it one, 10-day time frame at a time, because it'll be a lot better that way, especially for you snow lovers. As you basically have this idea that it needs to start snowing on November 1st and snow every single day right up until the end of April. And I'm gathering, with the way the weather pattern is setting up right now, everybody seems to think that it should have started snowing today and snowing every single day from now until the end of April. Well, neither of those possibilities are going to happen. So let me just remind everybody, those of you who are in the great state of New Jersey, particularly in North Jersey, I will be here at the Springfield Free Public Library, which is conveniently located where? In Springfield, New Jersey. So there's the address on the screen, 66 Mountain Avenue, and their phone number is 973-376 4930, and it's sfplnj.org, okay? sfplnj.org. The Springfield Public Library. That is on Wednesday, this Wednesday, October the 17th, and I will be there at 7 o'clock. We're going to talk weather and winter, and probably talk about Hurricane Michael and anything else that happens to be part of the equation here going forward. And usually, if you've never, if those of you who have been to my Long Island talks know this, that what winds up happening is we wind up taking these conversations out into the parking lot afterward, because after all, they just chase us out when it's all said and done, and that's fine. So come on out. We usually have a lot of fun with these things, a lot of subject matter taking hold, and we'll hope that you can make it, okay? And if not, I'm booking another library talk on Long Island, and that's going to be coming up on the 12th of December, which is a Wednesday night. Now, I have my platform on Patreon for those of you who want extensive weather coverage. You can jump on that platform. It's a subscription platform that just costs a couple of bucks a month, and you not only get all my website posts with no ads, but you get additional posts that I don't put up on the website and don't put up on social media or Facebook. Plus, if you've got questions or comments, you can contact me, because there's messaging capability, and I will get back to you on a timely fashion. So I will put that up on the link up on the chat board, and you can take a look at it and decide We're almost up to 100 members, and I'd like to take it even higher. I have also been doing some exclusive video posts on Patreon, although the last couple of days it's been a little tough, but we'll get back to that, especially as storms get underway. So let's get going here with where we're headed for the next week to 10 days. I think I'm going to start off with we're going to start off with the weather models tonight. And again, just bear with me because I'm a little bit behind schedule here, and that is I usually have the maps that I'm going to use kind of all set and ready to go, but I'm going to have to do it at the same time that I'm talking to you guys. So we're going to start off with the upper air, and we have the concept of the switch being flipped, and we saw that happen late last week, and now we're into a brand new weather pattern, and Michael seems to be the catalyst for all of this, and we've gone to a trough in the east, ridge in the west, and we actually do have a bit of a cutoff low that's dropped down into the southwestern part of the U.S. I've got the new GFS up, but I'm going to start with the old one. We'll go back one run, and then we're going to go forward to the new run, because at least we'll have a few more frames of it. But it appears that we've locked into this trough into the east idea for the next 2 weeks. And one of the things that I would just point out in past experiences with these sorts of things, when you have a prolonged trough like this, it probably becomes a matter of time before one short wave winds up dropping down southeastward and creating problems. And I know there's already been scuttlebutt about things happening toward the end of the month, and I kind of see how something could come out, but really in terms of specifics at this point, it's probably not a good idea to speculate too much, if only because of the fact that your model runs are just going to change over and over again from run to run, and you're going to have folks getting all excited about one thing or another. And the best way to approach this sort of thing is you really just have to watch it evolve. Get a general perspective of what the upper air pattern actually is, and then go from there, because you'll be a lot saner for it, and you won't be going through these emotional ups and downs. So what I've done here is I've put up, and this is actually yesterday's European, which would be valid for Wednesday morning, so we can take a look at what's actually happening in the upper air. You have a total change from what we had back late last week when Michael played through with that ridge in the east, trough in the west. So now we've flipped everything 180 degrees, and in prior live streams, we have discussed that notion that we've done this flip on this flip back and forth with the ridge gone and the trough replacing it. So we are going to, with this trough in the east, what's happening is, if you look in Canada, I've circled 3 upper air lows. The B is a little bit off, but the A and C, they're all about in the same spot. And these upper lows are basically just kind of lifting up and rotating around each other. So with this trough locked into the eastern part of the U.S., what's happening is that as each one of these upper lows makes its natural progression from west to east and then lifts up and out, the next one just pivots around and drops in. So as each one pivots around and drops in, you wind up with shots of cold air. We've already seen one come into the east this weekend. That first shot pulling out now, and as a result, we warmed up today into the 60s, and in South Jersey right now, and places to the south from there are in the 70s. A bit of a warm front is trying to push northward. Got a cold front swinging in from the west, and that front comes through, so we get cold shot B, which is going to come in for later Wednesday, Thursday, and into early Friday. And this shot will be colder than the one we just had, so there's likely to be some frosts and freezes, and they'll be a bit more widespread than with the prior shot. And then there is a third shot. So as B lifts out, C is going to drop in, and that's going to drop in over the weekend. And that will bring down the coldest shot of this sequence of 3 that we're looking at. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the last of it. I'm just focusing on these 3. Look out in the west. You've got this ridge up in the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific North America Index is strongly positive with that strong ridge there and that trough off the southeast coast. Though the PNA is calculated by combining the 2. You have a rather deep trough out in the Pacific near 160 degrees west with a low in the Aleutian. So the trough ridge setup is perfect for a trough in the east. And by the way, you have a strong ridge also out east of 40 degrees west that goes up toward Iceland and goes east of Greenland. And this too is kind of locking in those vortexes that you're seeing there on the screen. Now we're going to jump. I'm going to jump now to the next graphic, which is going to take us into next weekend. And this is for next Sunday. And the upper air in Canada has changed a little bit in terms of having those 3 obvious upper lows. You see that the nothing stays static. There's always a sense of rearrangement going on, but the ridge in the northwest remains very strong. You now have a deep cutoff moving toward east of the Aleutians and heading toward the Gulf of Alaska, which is really going to try and pump that ridge up. So you've got this strong flow coming down from northern Canada into the western lakes, and another upper trough pivoting around. So this is where we'll get what I would say is the coldest, what will be the coldest shot of air out of this sequence of 3 that is underway at the moment. So let me just bring back, let's go to Google Chrome, and thank you very much, and we'll come back to the GFS in the long term, and we'll take a look at where this is going. Maps, of course, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com, that great and wonderful site of Levi Cowens, and you can definitely use that site if you're a weather geek. Okay, so there's your up. You see how the upper lows just kind of rotate around. So here comes that trough. This is a pretty strong shot of chilly air. Ridge in the west, trough in the east. Then that lifts out, and you still got some energy rolling along here into the east as we head through day 9 and day 10. Now, here's where models start to differ a bit between the GFS and the Canadian and the European somewhat. The GFS takes this trough later next week and pulls it out, brings a little bit of a ridge there building in the eastern part of the United States, but you notice that there's already another trough coming into the plains. The GFS wants to dive this down into the southeastern part of the United States and then lift it up the east coast in the long term. I don't know if that necessarily is going to be the case. The European, looking at the Europeans' view, the Europeans got a slightly different idea in that, at least initially, the trough in the east pulls out further east, and it has a system coming along in the southern stream, but it has it much further, has it up into Oklahoma, and the surface low with this winds up being further north. The GFS is doing some weird things with this tropical system that it shoots out east-northeast into the Gulf of Mexico and develops it, and then loses it, and then forms another low and brings it up the east coast. That looks way too complicated for me, okay? Also, by the way, notice that there is a little bit of a blocking high that forms north on the European, north of 40 degrees north here out in the Atlantic. So we're going to have to watch this in the longer haul to see if that gives us any kind of negative NAO trends in the longer term. The Pacific still looks interesting because you still have general troughing in the Gulf of Alaska. So while there's energy coming into the northwest, eventually a ridge will try and probably pop back up there. You're never going to hold on in any pattern that you have. You're always going to have these periods where your muscles flex and then relax, flex and relax. So, if you see the trough temporarily disappear and the ridge temporarily flatten out, this is just part of the normal process. And then the key is going to be whether they wind up firing up again. By the way, the Canadian today was a bit different in that the Canadian opens up this idea of a deep shortwave after this trough lifts out you get this next shot for Sunday into Monday. It digs here. It actually builds this big upper high, even sooner, faster, and stronger than the European has it towards Iceland and Greenland. It has a bit of a blocky signature to it, so it digs this next shortwave down to near New Jersey and Long Island by the time we get to day 9, and the outcome of this was some sort of deepening coastal low with wet snow being indicated and accumulating wet snow over by me. I'm surprised I didn't see a whole lot of that around social media. I thought that would certainly get everybody excited. But just as we say in the with the Canadian model, with respect to what it likes to do with tropical systems and spinning them up all the time and spinning them up everywhere, you got to be really careful with the Canadian and how it handles situations like this for winter lows. But I will say, it's always possible that you could wind up with something coming down here later next week that's a bit stronger and deeper and digs further west. And I think that's part of the wintertime puzzles that we go through here in the short and medium range. And the new GFS is out to 162 hours, so we can at least carry it along on the surface. And by the way, I'm going to also address the current weather conditions, because we do have some weather going on this evening, but I'll do that toward the end of this. So here's our new GFS, and of course we've got this cold front coming through this evening, and the problem, the Storm Prediction Center has areas from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England in a marginal risk for severe weather. The problem is there's this marine layer that's being very, very stubborn and very difficult in some areas in trying to get out of the way. So that might limit development. They have marginal risk, and there's this very narrow line of storms, but we'll show you on the radar shortly. But here's a shot of air for Wednesday into Thursday, and there's a second cold front. You can see that low, that 99 low north of Lake Superior tomorrow morning. Just runs into eastern Canada, so there's a trailing cold front. Not a whole lot of weather with that front, but in the colder air on Wednesday in upstate New York and up into northern New England, do not be at all surprised if you wind up seeing some rain and snow shower activity out of that. So that diminishes, and now here comes the front for Saturday and Sunday, and that pulls through, and you'll notice this one's got a significant push of cold air. I would expect there'll probably be some freezes out of this in many areas of the Northeast before it's all said and done, and some snow showers coming in off the lake, so a little bit of lake effect. We only have out to 162 hours on the surface, so the core of that cold air, so we're now into next Monday. And much of the country, if you look across the U.S., except for down near the Gulf states and in Texas and in the southern plains with the next cold front, much of the country relatively quiet. You do get things. If we get to this point next Monday, there's very little, if any, precip going on anywhere from coast to coast. So a bit of a relaxation mode to some degree in terms of the upper air. Why don't we do this now? Because we are halfway through the month. Here's a good chart for you snow lovers, just to change subject matter a little bit. But we've been talking about Siberian snow cover. Well, there's also North American snow cover, and this is a chart that I got from a tweet from Dr. Judah Cohen. If you go to my website, meteorologistjoechaffe.com, I wrote about this last night. You can check that out. And Patreon members, you can do that as well if you haven't already, which I'm sure you probably have. But you've got the Siberian snow cover chart on that on Patreon. But the North American snow cover for so far, and that's in the red line. The green line was last year's, which was actually quite impressive during the months of October and November, right near the top of the chart here by the time we got to the end of October. Well, it is running at a pace even stronger than that. It's higher than at any time in the last 13 years. So if that trend continues, we're going to finish at the top of the chart. And I do believe that North American snow cover does play a big role in winter. You look at winters where the snow cover growth in North America in the fall is low. That becomes problematic for Canadian cold air masses. When we look at the Siberian snow cover, it's because we're trying to establish the sort of Siberian connection of those bitter cold air masses that come across and occasionally do come down. But you got to have that Canadian snow cover to support that cold air as it moves along. So the North American snow cover continues to grow at a very active pace. So for you snow lovers, you want to put that in your column, put a check mark in the snowier winter column if you live in the Northeast and the northern mid-Atlantic states and back through the Great Lakes. North American snow cover, that goes into the plus side of the column. Siberian snow cover right now goes on to the minus side of the column of the column because of the fact that the Siberian snow cover has been lagging and is very close to the bottom of what we've seen in the last 13 or so years. Of course, this could change on a dime. We could wind up seeing snow cover advancing in Siberia and not so much in North America, although the pattern would suggest that the North American snow cover advance should continue. Coming back to the GFS here, let's go back to the old run. And this is what it did from the old run, where it has this tropical system. You can see it here. Actually, you can't really see it because it comes in pretty far to the south. But some of that energy just sort of rolls along, and you get a low that forms in the Southwest Gulf. And you know what? I don't even know if this is this is so far, 9 days out, and it's already changed from what it did yesterday. So really, you can't put faith in this. But I think what we can say, if we look at the upper air, the general idea, again, with the trough in the east, at some point, something's going to try and happen. And especially if it starts to get a little bit blocky. And this is what the GFS is trying to tell us here. And I think the European, to some extent, is telling us the same thing. And even the Canadian is, in its own kind of convoluted way, opening up a digging system coming in much sooner than the other models have. But the bottom line is, something would... I think with the trough in the east, ridge in the west scenario, and that very strong PNA, that Pacific North America index, we are going to see, I think we are going to see something try toward the end of the month in terms of, a coastal system of some kind. I'm not going to speculate beyond that because that is not going to get you very far. Okay, I've got the teleconnection indices, and you see the strong PNA here, the Pacific North America index, very strong come October 23rd, 21st through the 25th, and still positive right through the period. The NAO actually, for the first time on the teleconnection indices, actually going negative. It wasn't showing that over the last several days or more. But it had long-term positive, it seemed, for a while. But now models trying to show this idea of blocking, and the ensembles, this is the ensemble indices, they're calculated off the ensembles, has it going negative after the 21st. So positive PNA, negative NAO, and the EPO is negative, goes to neutrals, kind of slightly positive. So it may not have a huge amount of impact, but we'll watch that to see how that evolves. So we're getting clues that maybe something toward month's end might occur. All right, why don't we go to the radar? Again, I apologize for having to pull these. I usually try to have these things prepped up, but here's what's going on this evening. And we've got some shower activity, some showery rains here and there, but the cold front is with the showers that are in now east central Pennsylvania, moving southwestward from there. Not seeing a whole lot of development. There's like a little narrow line of some heavy downpours here. One of the things that the short range models have been doing is firing this stuff up as it got closer to the coast. And again, I think the marine layer is going to be the biggest question here. Try to go to the HRRR model. Hang on. And we've got the latest one, which is from 5 p.m. So here's the HRRR's representation of the radar looks like it might be a little underdone. Fires up some storms here after 9, 10 o'clock in southern and central New Jersey and maybe out to eastern Long Island. This would make sense because this is the area that's gotten warm sectored. The warm sector hasn't really quite made it further north. So I really am wondering, my big issue with this is the fact that that marine layer, which remains fairly stubborn. And we know that the marine layer loves to hang tough sometimes. Either way, I'm not looking, if there's the odd stronger cell in all of this, okay, I can go for that. But I'm not thinking that this is going to be any kind of widespread outbreak. Here's the Storm Prediction Center's forecast here for this evening, and you can see the marginal risk going from northeastern Virginia through most of Maryland, Delaware, all of New Jersey, southeastern PA, southern areas of the Hudson Valley, southern New England, and Long Island, and then the general area of thunderstorms extends down into Texas and Louisiana, where you would expect it to be. And by the way, in terms of the cold that's going on, here is the latest maps with regards to the Weather Service's watches and warnings that are up. And you've got extensive freeze warnings through the Central Plains, on up through the lower Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley with frost advisories to the south. The green in Texas, those are still flood watches that are up for central Texas, with the frontal boundary down in that area, and also the fact that you've got this overrunning with a cold high to the north and tropical air that's in the Gulf of Mexico, so you're getting some overrunning with that. I'll come back to the GFS in a minute. Quick check. I don't know if we can see far enough to the south here. Bring up the U.S. satellite view. You can see the frontal boundary. You can see the moisture on the southern end. Again, this is all overrunning with the high and the northeast winds. The just south of the Texas coast, you're back into the tropical air. You can also see at the bottom center there is disturbed weather moving into towards Central America, and the Hurricane Center did acknowledge that this might become a tropical depression before it makes landfall. I wasn't really too keen on it tonight with what's going on. That looks like it's going to go west-northwest and just inland and not come up into the northwestern Caribbean. And by the way, here's the rainfall for the next 7 days. Texas, down along the Gulf Coast, a little bit, what you see in the east, most of that is front-end loaded, and very little precip when you go back out across the northern and central plains, into the western lakes, northern and central plains, the northern Rockies, and through much of the west coast, except the immediate coastal areas of the Pacific Northwest, looking to be quiet precip-wise over the next 7 days. Just see, let's try and bring back up how much more of the GFS we have, and then I'll come back to the chat board with you guys and we'll talk a little bit. Okay, let's bring it a little wider. You know what, we'll go to let's go to the eastern region. We can look at the upper air from this perspective. All right, flat ridge there, by the way, that's off the Florida coast. This is not punching up because the jet stream in the north is overwhelming, okay? And there's your next short wave with your shot of cold air for Wednesday, later Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Flat ridge pops up toward the end of the week, only to give way to this deeper trough. This is the cold shot for Sunday and Monday of next week. Then that lifts out, and now you've got another trough here. This is where the GFS and the Canadian differ, by the way. See how the GFS brings this fourth shot. This is in the middle of the week of October 22nd. This fourth shot down from New England down along the immediate east coast. If you look at the Canadian's upper air for the same time frame, it has a much stronger system digging down. And this is where the Canadian just kind of cuts it off like crazy. southeast of Montauk, south of Cape Cod there, into a really wrapped up low. I don't know. It seems overdeveloped to me. I'd like to see some of the other models come in for confirmation, but we're not quite getting that. And with respect to the GFS, as far as later next week is concerned, well, first off, even for Sunday into Monday, Monday morning, if you look at the temperatures here, you got a lot of 30s and 20s. Look at how cold it gets across the Ohio Valley down into Virginia, North Carolina, and also up into upstate New York and up through much of New England. So there are going to be a lot of frosts and freezes out of this for the cold shot that's coming next weekend, this coming weekend, into the early part of next week. And with respect to the surface here, in its long range going out to 204. So this is the Canadian, by the way. That was the Canadian's view. The GFS has the coldest air here by Sunday night. We'll bring up the GFS temperatures. And here's the GFS's view for next Monday morning. Large area with temperatures down in the 20s. From northern New England all the way down into the central Appalachians. The coastal areas stay a little bit warmer, but even the coastal areas are going to get down into the 30s. We've got 30s down into eastern North Carolina and low 40s into South Carolina. So this is going to be a pretty strong shot of cold air that we're setting up for next weekend. So kind of, let me just apologize again. I'm just sort of jumping around with what I'm doing tonight. Usually I try to be a little more organized, but some nights there's a big rush of things to do, and I've got to be flexible. So I will try and get it a bit more organized tomorrow. Nice to see everybody on board. Rain for a week straight for Ben McGinnis. We've got to bring an end to that at some point. And for Colt Sheffield, 2 weeks straight in southeast Texas. It has been unending in that part of the world. Colt, I do concur. Are we done with hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico? Asks Tootie Young. I don't know. Usually when you get that first front to come through down into the Gulf of Mexico, it does tend to shut the hurricane season down. I'm not 100% sold on that yet for the Gulf of Mexico and for your neck of the woods. I think that, there's probably room for another system to come out of the Northwest Caribbean between now and the end of the month. I will say that if we do wind up seeing it shut down early, that might be another check mark for you snow lovers to put in the snowy winter column for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, because and also put a check mark in the box for an early start to the winter, because usually in seasons, well, it seems that anyway, in seasons where hurricane seasons shut down relatively early, then you wind up with an early start to winter. Tootie's Young, New Orleans, snow for Christmas. Hey, I lived in New Orleans for 3 years, and would that we, I know New Orleanians would love to have a white Christmas. And you've actually had snow events over the last couple of winters. If I remember correctly, there were a couple of them last year that you got to see some snow down your way. So don't rule it out. You never know. Past performance is not always a guarantee of future results, but sometimes that's the only thing you have to look at. Any snow for coastal southern New England anytime soon? Not in the cards right now, Matthew Warman. I can't put faith in long-range models that show stuff out, days and days beyond, especially now, because we are in a time of year where, the vast majority of years, especially for coastal areas, you don't see anything. Oftentimes, you don't even see your first flurries until sometime late in the month of November. So, granted, we do have a pattern that is colder than average, but we got to get a little bit deeper into the calendar first. Milagros Mogro, what about Florida with respect to the chance for another tropical storm or hurricane. I think the odds are going down. The odds are going down considerably. I hesitate to make an unequivocal statement that says it's done. If we keep seeing this trough in the eastern part of the United States, where we're pushing these cooler air masses pretty far to the south, it may shut the hurricane season down. So the odds would probably favor it that it would be shut down a bit earlier. Why is the Gulf so broiling hot? And it looped Ed still in the loop eddy. I'm not sure what you mean by loop Ed. Well, I mean, with the absence of Eddy, we're deep in the month of October. I can remember a number of years where the first cold fronts in the Gulf of Mexico, the first cold fronts coming down from the north, get down into the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico in mid to late September, and that really hasn't happened. We've had a full extra month of tropical conditions throughout much of the Gulf states, but particularly over the Gulf of Mexico. Some fronts have made it down fairly far to the south, but we haven't had that one good, clean, solid push yet. And I think that's going to keep ocean water temperatures up a bit higher. Let's see. I'm just trying to get to the rest of your chat. Okay, James Hines. Nova Scotia is usually much more mild in temperatures compared to New Brunswick and Maine because you're out in the ocean. Yeah, you do stick out a bit there, Ben McInnes. So your weather's probably, I can somewhat relate to the weather on Long Island in the wintertime. Is probably not that dissimilar to what you get, but you probably wind up with more snow than I do. But you do wind up in general with more snow than I do. But oftentimes the winters that favor heavy snows for Nova Scotia are from coastal lows that are coming up, and that probably means that for areas in southern New England and down from New Jersey, southern New England also wind up with above normal snowfall. It doesn't always work that way, but I bet you more times than not it does. All right, coming up on 6:45, folks. I'm going to have to call it quits at this point. Israel, I know you've been asking me about the Joe and Joe show tonight. We are planning to do one at 9:15 Eastern Time, so we'll do that. It will be uploaded to sent to Patreon users first, and everybody else will get it second. So just one last time for those of you who are interested, I have a complete and expanding weather platform on Patreon. It's a subscription platform. It's just $2 a month for those of you who are interested. Really, really appreciate it. Those that have subscribed seem to be very happy with what I've done with it so far. And I will be doing more things, especially once we get into the winter storm season. So just bear that in mind. If you want more weather, that might be a good place to be. And for those of you who also would like to support my channel, one easy way to do it is to shop on Amazon. I put on the Amazon link on the chat board for those of you. It's also on the descriptor to this live stream and the descriptor to this video. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and affiliated sites. If you shop on Amazon, you get your stuff. Doesn't cost you anything extra. Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin, and I get a few cigars for my drive-in and drive home from work, and I appreciate it greatly for those of you who have done that. Weather tracker, I'm ready for winter too. I'm really enjoying this cool air, by the way, to finally get this humidity out. When I sleep very well on cold nights under a lot of blankets. I'm not big on having the heat up. I can keep my house at 62. As long as I got a bunch of blankets I can get under, I'm good. Anomalous Howard, Europe is expected to be going much colder than average in a couple of weeks too. Yeah, a lot of that, as the pattern sort of rearranges itself, blocking could be important there, particularly if some sort of Scandinavian block develops. But we'll see. It's still, remember, this is a time of year where chess pieces are getting moved around. So just bear that in mind. There's, nothing we're seeing. I had someone earlier, I think, ask me about the fact, no, actually, this was on Twitter, getting all excited about the pattern now, thinking that it's, we've already locked in for the whole winter. And I would just caution you, caution everybody, for you big big weather and snow enthusiasts out there. That's not necessarily true. Just because we have this pattern now need not necessarily mean that come December that we might not see another flip, and it might flip to something you don't like. So just bear that in mind. Brian Lathan, is there a website that gives future total precip forecast for New York City? Are you talking about like an actual figure in terms of total precip amounts? Let me think that through, because there's a number of text models that'll give you some precip numbers, but and you certainly, what you can do is you can pull up on Tropical Tidbits, you can pull up total accumulated precip. If you're looking, if you don't need a specific number and you want to look at a general number that the map produces, you can go to Tropical Tidbits and say you pull up the GFS and click on the surface features. If you click on where it says regions and say pull up the Northeast, and then go to precip moisture and put total accumulated precip up, you can, I'm just bringing it up here for you now. You can, look at a map like this going forward and just basically guess off the scale. I'm not sure exactly, if you could be a little more specific, you can message me and be a little bit more specific about what exactly you're looking for, and I'll see if I can try to help you out with all that. And APAR moist is moist the best. One, hello, Mr. Joe. I was wondering, I live on Long Island and we get the brunt of all snowstorms. I'm just wondering if we're going to receive our first snowfall. Well, I'm with you. Okay, so I'm waiting for the answer to that question as well. Look, nothing is in the cards anytime soon. It would be very unusual for us to see a snowfall before at the very earliest the middle of November, and more than likely into the first part of December. So let's be a little patient and watch the weather pattern evolve, because I really can't give you the answer. The answer you want is me to say yes, and I can't do that right now. Hi, JS Sweetie. Always good to see you here. Snow is everybody's favorite topic, and I imagine the topic is going to be getting more and more front and center going forward. Anthony Orr, of course, our resident statistician, always coming up with fun facts. He's terrific, and we thank him very, very much for the help that he gives me with these live streams. He's just wonderful. Severe weather signal possible by the end of the month in the southeast. The GFS Euro trying to carve an upper trough around that time with the Euro ensembles. I did see that, Rod M. Models doing it in various ways, but yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Of course, that would be coupled with some kind of storm probably along the East Coast in one form or another. But again, a lot of variability here. We've got a ways to go. 11 and 12, Steve White, that was an El Nino year, which we don't have, a strong El Nino year. We have a weak one at best right now, and as long as it stays that way, it shouldn't be too problematic. All right, folks, I got to run. It's coming up on 6:50, and I got a weather hit at the top of the hour to take care of. So thanks for being here. Again, check out the Patreon page for more on this. For more on weather and all the extra posts that I got up there, and also again, give it a look on my Amazon page. If you search, just use the search box and search for your stuff, and use the Amazon link. It's a great way to support my channel, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Thanks very much for being here tonight, folks. Joe and Joe Show tonight on Facebook at 9:15. We will see you tomorrow.